It started like any other Saturday night. Lily, Elara, and I had our usual routine meeting up at the local bar. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet spot where we could unwind without the chaos of a crowded place. We'd spent countless evenings there, enjoying drinks and laughter, never expecting anything out of the ordinary. But that night something changed. What should have been a simple outing turned into a nightmare that would forever alter how I viewed the world around me. We arrived around 9 p.m., and as usual, the bar had its typical crowd regulars chatting with the bartender, groups of friends laughing, and the air thick with the sound of clinking glasses and casual conversations. Lily and Elara were already a few drinks in when I got there, their laughter ringing out across the room. They were always the outgoing ones, never shy about striking up a conversation with anyone, while I was more reserved, content to watch the world go by from the corner of my seat. I wasn't sure if it was just the weight of the week catching up with me, or if I simply wasn't in the mood to party, but I felt a sense of unease that night, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The night wore on, and I reluctantly found myself drinking more than I had intended. A couple of cocktails turned into several, and before I knew it, my head was swimming, my thoughts disjointed. The world around me seemed to blur too many people, too much noise. Lily and Elara were still in the middle of their own conversation, and though I could hear them, their voices seemed muffled, like they were coming from a distance. I tried to focus on the moment, but it wasn't easy. There was a strange sense of detachment that settled over me, like I wasn't really there. By the time the clock ticked past midnight, I knew it was time to leave. The bar had grown more crowded, and the noise seemed to press in on me. The alcohol was beginning to take its toll, and the last thing I wanted was to feel completely out of control. Lily and Elara were still caught up in their conversation, so I decided to slip away quietly without saying goodbye. I probably should have said something, but the thought of navigating the drunken haze of a drawn-out farewell seemed like too much. I figured I'd just head home and collapse into bed. The walk home, however, felt much longer than usual. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, the chill instantly sobering me up just enough to feel the weight of the situation. The streets were eerily quiet, too quiet. There were no passing cars, no other pedestrians, just the rhythmic sound of my own footsteps echoing in the emptiness. It felt as though the world had pressed pause. The silence was suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, though I had no idea why. When I reached my house, the familiar sight of the porch light flickering above my door was a relief. I bent down to retrieve the spare key hidden under the flower pot, something I'd done 1,000 times before without thought. I hadn't expected anything to be out of the ordinary. My parents were away for the weekend, and my younger brother Liam was usually out late with his friends, so I was alone, which didn't bother me at first. It was routine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the cool air from the outside hitting me as I closed it behind me and locked it again. The house was dark, the silence almost comforting after the loud buzz of the bar. I'd always been used to this kind of solitude. The house was still, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Everything was exactly as it should be. I kicked off my shoes and tossed my jacket on the bed. My thoughts were a little hazy, but the warmth of my bed was calling to me, and I decided to collapse onto it without bothering to change out of my clothes. I barely even remembered to brush my teeth. I reached for my phone to check in with Lily and Elara, something I always did after a night out. I wanted to make sure they got home okay. The screen lit up, and I quickly sent a message to Lily. "Did you guys get home safe?" She replied almost instantly, "Yeah, we're fine." "How did you get away from that guy?" I stopped mid-text, confused. "What guy?" "The guy who wouldn't leave you alone," she said. My heart skipped a beat. What guy? The memory was blurry, but something inside me clicked. There had been someone, hadn't there? A man at the bar, someone who'd approached me and wouldn't stop talking. But I didn't remember much more. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but a growing sense of unease was creeping in, taking hold of me like a vice. The alcohol had dulled my senses, and I couldn't make sense of the fragments of memory that floated to the surface. I was about to respond when I heard a faint sound downstairs. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, or maybe the wind rattling the windows. But the noise grew louder, and then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of the front door creaking open. My blood ran cold. I hadn't heard Liam come in, and I was sure I had locked the door behind me. Panic surged through my chest as I instinctively grabbed my phone and dialed Liam's number. The phone rang and rang, but there was no answer. The sound of footsteps echoed through the house, heavy and slow, like someone was deliberately making noise, walking in a way meant to make their presence known. My pulse quickened, and I stood frozen in the darkness, barely breathing. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Whoever it was, they were coming upstairs. My thoughts raced. Was it Liam? Had I just missed him coming in? No, it didn't feel right. The footsteps were deliberate, calculated. It was too late for anyone to be coming home without a sound. I knew I was alone, but the thought of someone else in the house made my stomach churn with fear. The footsteps paused outside my bedroom door. I could hear the soft rasp of someone breathing, slow and measured. My heart hammered in my chest as I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. I was terrified, but I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My body felt frozen, trapped in some nightmarish stupor. Then, I heard the door creak open. Liam, I called out, my voice barely a whisper. There was no response. The door stayed ajar, and the footsteps outside my room didn't retreat. I felt a chill run down my spine, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My mind raced. Who was it? What did they want? I pulled the blankets tighter around me, trying to calm my breathing, my body trembling. The door shifted again, just slightly, as if whoever was out there was waiting for me to make a sound. I couldn't stand it anymore. I reached for my phone and texted Liam again, my fingers trembling as I typed, "Are you home?" His response came almost immediately, "No. Why? Why do you keep unlocking the front door?" I felt my stomach drop, my hands going clammy. My throat tightened as the realization sank in. Someone had been inside my house, and it wasn't Liam. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, to escape, but my legs wouldn't move. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the doorway. A soft shuffle, a faint creak of floorboards. Someone was in the room with me. The silence that followed felt suffocating, oppressive. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end as I strained to listen for any sign of movement. There was none. I was alone with whatever it was that was lurking in the dark corners of my room. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Lily. "He left right after you did. I think he was following you." I felt the blood drain from my face as I read the message. Following me? The man from the bar. He had followed me home. My mind reeled, trying to process the situation, but the shock of it all left me paralyzed. I could hear breathing again, close this time, right behind me. My body tensed as a figure moved just out of my line of sight, hidden in the shadows. I called 911. My hands were shaking so violently that I could barely keep my grip on the phone. I just had to wait. I had to hold on until help arrived. The seconds felt like hours. The door to my room creaked open wider. A figure stepped into view, silhouetted by the dim light from the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. There, in the doorway, was the man. The same man who had been at the bar, the one who had followed me. But something was wrong. He wasn't quite right. His form seemed to flicker in the low light, his edges blurring like a shadow that couldn't fully take shape. A chill swept through me as I realized he wasn't alive. The man before me was a ghost, a twisted specter who had been watching, studying me, and now he was here to finish whatever twisted plan he had started. The temperature dropped even further, the darkness around him growing thicker, and I felt a bone-deep terror take root in my soul. This wasn't just a random encounter. He had been haunting me all along, and now he had come for me. Before I could react, he lunged at me with terrifying speed. My scream echoed through the house as I scrambled for my phone, but in my panic, it slipped from my hands and hit the floor. Frozen with fear, I could only watch as he moved closer, my heart racing in my chest. Just as I thought it was over, the sound of sirens reached my ears. The police arrived moments later, but when they burst in, he was gone. No sign of him, no trace, just the eerie silence of an empty room. My mind raced, but I knew one thing for certain: he had been here, and somehow he had vanished. And the moral of the story is, always remain vigilant and trust your instincts, for they may be your first line of defense against the unseen threats that lurk in the shadows. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling tales. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps keep the suspense alive.